Welcome back, everybody, to End of Life Conversations and our weekly dispatch. I am editor, and I had a good one the other day, but I forgot what it was. Jack of
Good thing
many
you're
trades.
the editor.
Good thing I'm the editor. And okay, being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Sam Lee Zemke and Wakil has a pretty good piece for us to talk about today.
Yeah.
So I'll hand it off.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Reverend Wakil, and I spent the last few days out in Pennsylvania with my daughter and son-in-law, soon to be, at their farm. And they have a new farm out there. It's a beautiful place, 80 acres right by the Delaware River. And 80 acres are in conservancy, but they have an area around their house where they can do farming, and they're doing sustainable organic practice farming right now. And it just has this beautiful, beautiful energy. And of course, right now being spring, the flowers are all blooming and all the plants are coming up, and we're doing all this. So we're working with them, and we're basically doing what you do as a farmer. You choose to allow these things to grow and to point out to decide that these other things are weeds, and we make the decision to take the life of these weeds. And there's a certain level of like loss and grief and like confusion, even like, who are we to make that decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with the forest being in conservancy, that part of that work is we spend time out in the forest and go, there's a plant that is not native, so we're going to tear that out of the ground. And I felt like I needed to, and I did, say prayers, to say, gosh, I'm not sure this is the right thing to do. I don't know how, and maybe I'm not as smart as I think. I mean, as humans, we've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. It's called agriculture, yeah. And so there was just a sense there that we are ending a life of a species, or choosing to end the life of a species. And should be aware of that, and we should think about it, and we should be humble about it. So that's what came up. So.
Yeah, the hubris that introduces a new species into a landscape.
Yeah.
And then the hubris of saying, oops, I can fix this. by killing this thing that I've introduced off. Such an interesting piece. I follow a lot of botanist, animist sort of folks, and on one side, I'll shout out this account, Crime Pays but Botany Doesn't.
Love it.
It's a big East Coast vibe, and talks about plants in a really accessible way. But he was walking through an sort of East Coast landscape and talking about how 500 years or 250 years, whatever, of interrupted indigenous land management has created like this, from his botanical eye, just this tragic landscape of, it's not fire managed, which is also like a choice, like a controlled dying.
Yeah.
You burn these places to kill them off, kill certain things off, and leave other pieces, or allow other pieces to flourish. And so that's not happening, and all of the invasives. And then on the other hand, and while I was watching those, I was remembering a conversation between two of my favorite animist thinkers, Rune Harjo, who does Nordic Animism podcast and work, and then Tyson Yunkaporta, who is an Australian Aboriginal animist and traditional sort of theorist, philosopher, spiritualist.
Wonderful author. Yeah.
wonderful author. Cannot recommend his book Sand Talk enough. But they met and had this really amazing conversation about the introduction of the fox and the cane toad to the Australian ecosystem.
Oh yeah.
And how they are non-native and highly destructive predators, but that in in the Australian Aboriginal sort of cosmology and cultural response, they've developed cane toad and fox songs
Mm.
because they're there now.
Okay.
And they have to deal with that. And so by creating the songs to go along with and be sung alongside the songs of the animals and plants and beings that have been there
Yeah.
and naturalized or are indigenous to that place,
Mm-hmm.
then it allows them to navigate those relationships in a different way.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
I think about that a lot too with, God, being here in the Pacific Northwest and the proliferation um, of blackberries,
Yeah.
Himalayan
Yeah.
blackberries. They're
Himalayan blackberries.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've worked on farms where they will take over everything and you are
They do.
constantly hacking them back.
Yeah. The
And at the
goats love them,
same
though.
the goats love them. And at the same time, there is a holiness and a sacredness to any life.
Yeah.
But I see the way that they spread and protect.
Mm. Yeah.
Like when, like seeing along the side of the road and when we are domesticating and obliterating ecosystem, like I know
Mm-hmm.
that they crowd out a lot of native species
Yeah.
and can cause a lot of damage there. But the world is changing. Our climate is changing. Things are dying,
Yeah.
whether there's an invasive there or not.
Yeah.
And that's part of that hubris piece. Does it,
Yeah.
if there's an ecological niche and these things fill that ecological niche, if sometimes it's rats, and rats
Mm-hmm.
are a challenging
Yeah.
creature.
Yeah.
But a blackberry bush provides cover for an animal that might otherwise have no cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so there's a
And
different kind of
provides
ecosystem.
amazingly beautiful, sweet berries that we can
That
eat too,
too. And the birds
Yeah.
love them and eat them and spread them
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there's another thing we have out here called Scotch broom,
Scotch broom, yes.
which was also brought over from Europe and is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we've talked about this in the past. I remember with my friend Daniel, who has a farm, talking because we were out there clearing out buttercup, which is another invasive species that can just take over things,
Mm-hmm.
And he and I were out there clearing the buttercup out and had this conversation. And there is, like you said, the word naturalized. There's a kind of there's a kind of a beauty to what you said about the Australians just acceptance of, these weren't here. They're here now. They've become natural. They're natural now as far as they're concerned, their energy and including, rats or the fuzzy-tailed rats we call squirrels, or the rabbits, just all these things that have just proliferated.
Mm-hmm.
And two parts of that. One is that, as far as their souls are concerned, they're alive there because they're alive there and they've found a place to be alive. And the other thing is that they are very, very prolific and very, very strong in that. And all of our work is really for nothing when it comes right down to it, because those blackberries, those rabbits, those squirrels, all these critters and species that we choose to control anyway, are really completely out of control and will continue to be long after we're here,
Mm-hmm.
So I think about that too, it's okay. Well, okay, there's maybe a point to controlling for the sake of our agriculture, or for the sake of growing food that we need, or protecting other critters or other species.
Right.
And yet, I guess part of what I'm thinking is important is what the Australian Indigenous people have recognized, and that is they're still sacred. Mm-hmm. And we still owe them that respect. Mm-hmm. We still owe them that prayer to say, I'm sorry, I'm about to rip you out of the ground because I don't think you belong here. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty dumb when it comes right down to it. But as far as I can tell, at least for the sake of these other things that I want to have stay here, I'm going to rip you out of the ground or burn the field or whatever. So, yeah, I think that's part of what this really points to, is recognizing that we are just humble humans with very limited perspectives, and when we choose to take the end of something's life, we should be aware of that, and honor that, and be sacred about it, do ritual around it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you're speaking to those pieces, I'm also thinking about like the bullfrogs, the invasive bullfrogs, in the San Juan Islands, and they have the really little uh, native frogs,
Yeah,
the little peepers that sing their songs all through summer, and people love them so much. And the bullfrogs are just eating them en masse and
yeah,
eating their tadpoles, and they're just like the numbers are being decimated. And so part of, there's part of this effort to like save those species, but in that I also feel a sense of like the inability to process the grief of the ramifications of these actions.
yeah,
That those are there now, like you're saying. It's just a fact
yeah,
that these plants are there now and we can manage them, but they're not going away.
yeah,
And that is that there's an irreparable shift. And can we mourn what was?
yeah,
Can we mourn all of the lives of these like beautiful native things that are being impacted in their stability
yeah,
and at risk of going away? Larger, in this time of mass extinctions, looming mass extinctions of all of these species that we are grieving and mourning. And in the book that I've been reading, Earth Grief, that I've talked about here before, there's no saving a lot of this.
yeah,
We
yeah,
are in this process and it is moving along. I'm also currently listening to the audiobook of Ministry for the Future by Kim Stanley Robinson, which is right in line with
yeah, yeah,
ecological loss and how do we meet what is going on and try to do what we can. Um, and my brain just went in 3 different directions at once, and so I have to find the path again. Or I can hand it off to you if you
yeah.
have
Well,
any thoughts on that.
yeah. While you're thinking about or pulling those back, the couple things have come up, and I was thinking about this. Is that the other thing that we see out on the East Coast, and actually when Asher, my son-in-law to be, did his podcast, and we'll put a link to that episode because it was all about species loss, and he had done part of his master's program. He had done some work on, I think, the chestnut and how it was wiped out at one point by some blight that came through. I think it was a blight. There was also there's elm, that Dutch elm disease, which happened on the East Coast, wiped out all the elms. Right now they're having ash borer, which is wiping out all the ash trees. And this stuff comes up a lot, and it comes up over and over again. And again, it's a result of our hubris, of our bringing stuff in that doesn't belong here, and then or other species that don't belong here, and or not having, or the climate change happening, and these insects, things moving and changing, or they're not being able to defend themselves as well because of the way we've taken down the understory. All these things, and yeah, you're right. These books are great about this, talking about the way that our presence and our culture on the earth has created all these problems that we're now mourning the loss of these species. I mean, Dutch elm, they used to just be up and down every street, in the East Coast. And it was like, and in forests, they had forests of elm trees, and they had forests of chestnut trees, and they and the ash, and there's one example after another. And out here we have some pine beetles that are destroying pine trees, and it's just there's so many examples of this.
I
So
think
that,
that I think the emerald ash borers have made it to this coast too.
oh, very, very likely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a big effort here in Portland
Mm,
to try and work on that because all of the ash trees, which there are many in the city, are
yeah.
at risk and being like dying in mass.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we see all these examples, and that's yet another kind of sense of not only just mourning because, because we hate to lose a species, but and but there's also this sense of responsibility and
Hmm.
guilt, actually shame, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
that I think is worth noting and paying attention to. And part
Yep.
of the awareness of this is noticing that, yeah, I feel ashamed of our species, of our hoovers and what's caused this loss. Um,
Mm.
and so, what do you do next? What do you do about that?
Right. Right. Um, brings back. I regathered
Good.
the the trajectory of that, which is how all of these also play into larger systems of guilt and grief and shame that we carry, especially those of us who are uh, settlers, descendants of settlers and colonizers,
Yeah.
and the sense that we are an invasive species in certain landscapes.
Yeah.
You know, the whole narrative of like humanity is a cancer and all
Yeah.
of that stuff. And how is that reflected when we look around us and see an invasive species doing invasive species things, and the parallels, and I 90% sure that a lot of people are not consciously making those connections,
Yeah.
but on a subconscious and like emotional level,
Yeah. I
to
think we
see
feel it.
that loss and that destruction, and to carry some awareness that we did that
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
on a human level. And there are I mean in that uh Tyson and Kaporta Rune Harjo uh conversation, they talked about the fox as an allegory for the colonizer,
Mm. Mhm.
and how do we uh, 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 begin to shift
Mm.
from the function mentality, maybe not a mentality because that maybe implies like a conscious thing,
Mm.
but on a consciousness level, shift from invasive to naturalized
Mm.
in a landscape,
Mhm.
paying attention to the harmonics of a place, and
Yeah.
listening. You listen, and instead of finding every niche that you can insert yourself into and take advantage of, be more responsive to the
Yeah.
environment around you.
Yeah.
I think that's a key part of a naturalized species, is that it finds itself in the balance,
Mhm. Yeah.
or the greater ecosystem. They all find their balance together,
Yeah.
and so that's
Yeah.
not a perfect allegory, um, but there is a common thread there that
Yeah.
I'm
It
feeling.
does.
And
It does sort of point the way, and in a way toward, what that these my daughter and son-in-law are doing is, sustainable agriculture, right? Their
mhm,
whole and permaculture and all. So they're doing, and they and many others like them are trying to find ways to create that balance. We're growing food and we're we're doing it in a way that isn't harming the planet, and we're trying to find a balance between the things that are causing trouble in the forest and the things that aren't, and get back to as much as possible to that indigenous care of the land. Um,
mhm,
there's an argument for, and I'm sure there's probably people listening who are making this argument right now, that all this um, colonialism and mentality that we're talking about is just not fair because that's the way we survive, that's the way we've thrived, that's the way we've created this incredible United States, um, and it's not my perspective on it necessarily, but I want to recognize that there are
Mm-hmm.
probably people who feel that way and feel like it's not fair of us to be ashamed or to put shame on them for living their lives, for creating, enough food for everybody worldwide by having these massive, um, or what's it, solo culture, not solo culture,
Monoculture. Yeah.
monoculture farms, and we met some farmers while we were out there that are doing just that. They're raising soybeans, I believe, or corn. And it's a monoculture, and they have to continue to fertilize it, and they have to continue to, and it's not good for the land. It's not good for the things around it. But these are really cool, sweet guy. And this guy, he's a really
Right.
friendly guy.
Right.
He's like, let me know how I can help you. He says, if you need to do something that's bigger than you can handle, I've got big machines, I'll be
Mm-hmm.
glad to come over with my big machines or anything else I can do to help him. Welcome to the area, which
Yeah.
is really sweet. I mean, it's a guy who's been there for generations. And I worked
Right.
on ranches in Eastern Washington that had been around for generations, and they do
Mm-hmm.
what they do. They raise cattle, um, and raising cattle could be much more sustainable done in different ways. It's not.
Right. Right.
Um, and so, again, I just want to recognize that I don't think we should or should be shaming people for doing the work that they've done all their lives or for generations, and I want to make sure we kind of mention that or honor that um, it's true that that's why we have food in the supermarkets, as much food and as a huge variety of food as we have. And why we're being fed, although there's a lot, that's a whole nother subject,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to bring that up and just make sure that that we aren't trying to diss anybody basically for their choices. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's tough.
yeah, that
I
is.
don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to sit and argue with this hypothetical person in our
Yeah.
audience that you've mentioned,
Yeah.
or this subset of people, and I think it comes back to we can't necessarily blame the Scotch broom. We can't necessarily blame the
Himalayan.
invasive species that don't understand how out of balance their relationship with the surrounding ecosystem is.
Right. Yeah.
And not in a each person is a plant, and so when you pull a plant you're killing a person. That's not what I'm saying. On a maybe ideological or certainly metaphorical level, these practices or certain methodologies for relating to the environment are like an invasive species that are wrecking the environment. And I think luckily culture is much more mutable than biological presence in some ways. It's much easier to change culture, I would argue or say, than it is to get rid of all of the blackberry brambles that are growing along the highways.
Yeah. That's our path forward, is start to find new ways to understand the work that needs to be done, the work that we've done, the past, and find whatever human, everybody has to make their own choices around that.
Right.
And find their own balance and what they can and can't do or what they feel drawn to.
Right. And do our best with the understandings that we have, because we don't know. That's part of it, right? That hubris of I know exactly the thing and not the thing, but we can, observe what is going on and say, oh, this morning glory is choking out all the other plants. This monoculture thing, practice, factory farming or, whatever, are pushing the surrounding environment and whatever that translates to out of balance. And so like pulling those methodologies, weeding the methodologies to the best of our ability.
Yeah. Yeah. And finding new solutions.
And then dealing with the consequences.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
Yeah.
You know, there really is no right or wrong. We're just trying stuff.
Doing our best. Yeah.
Doing our best.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, it's funny how this always, all of our conversations seem to come back to, we don't know anything,
Yeah.
and we're doing our best and we're holding everything in balance the best we can. And I think just being aware of these things and having these conversations with each other is what's important, and being aware of the griefs that we hold and maybe the shame, and talking about them and ritualizing around them so that we can just recognize that in ourselves and in others, and find ways to be in conversation with others without getting into the blaming each other or blaming the plants or blaming the rats, or
Right.
Get back away from the shame, blame, and look at how can we move forward in a better way. What
Right.
are the solutions that will help? And I think sustainable farming is a great one. It's arguable that organic farming isn't at this point is not enough to feed the planet, but that's not unfixable. It's something it could be done. It's just, again, it's this whole cultural change that needs to happen.
Right.
So we can maybe a step at a time, and education at a time, and a conversation at a time. We can find our way.
And there are methods that we haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
And or old methods. In this conversation too, I'm thinking about like food forests.
Yeah.
And how, on the East Coast and here on the West Coast, where a lot of the like really fertile lands and people having a more like place-based or sedentary, not in conventional Western agriculture sense.
Yeah.
But like food forests are a human created thing.
Yeah.
Where certain species were selected and introduced and cultivated and encouraged over other species in certain environments.
Yeah.
Just with a different maybe scope and attention to the surrounding environment. But like they find those still 250 years after they're not being managed anymore, still doing their things.
Yeah, even like Amazon rainforest, they find these cultivated spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
They've been cultivated for thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are ways, there are choices. It's just, we've got to find ways to connect with each other and share and do our best and
say our prayers for the pieces that we need to pull.
Yeah.
and make those choices about what dies.
Yeah, with awareness. Yeah.
With awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful time talking to you again, as always.
Yeah.
And we hope you will all spread the news about this podcast and subscribe and tell all your friends. And and we look forward to our next conversation. And if you have ideas, if you'd like to talk about this with us, there is a chat online for any on the Substack. You can go on our Substack page, and we have a chat set up there for any subscribers. You can subscribe for free or send money. That's always fun. And so we'll put notes in there, and there are notes in our podcast notes always to our Substack presence. So that's a good place to communicate with us, and we would love to hear from you and hear what you think.
Yeah, we'd love to field topics for us to talk about in these spaces.
Yeah, because we're always challenged by what do we talk about today? But we always find something.
Always find something.
All right. Well, thanks again. Take care.
Until next time. Adios.
Conversations about the end of life.